Let me tell you something about grass. To most people, it is just the green stuff you have to mow every Saturday, so the Homeowners Association does not fine you into oblivion. It is a chore. It is a backdrop. But to me, oh no, to me, a lawn is a canvas. It is a testament to order, discipline, and the sheer force of will it takes to keep nature from turning your property into a jungle. I take pride in my lawn. I aerate. I overseed. I use a specific blend of fertilizers that I measure out like I am Walter White cooking up a batch in an RV. My grass is not just green. It is emerald. It is lush. It is the kind of grass that makes dads slow down as they drive by, nodding in silent respect. Now, picture this pristine, manicured masterpiece. It is the result of hundreds of hours of labor and thousands of dollars in supplies. It is perfect. And then, picture a 3-ton SUV driven by a woman who thinks traffic laws are merely suggestions from an oppressive government, tearing a muddy, ratted scar right across the corner of it every single morning. This is the story of how my neighbor, let us call her Sheila, decided that her time was more valuable than my property, and how I used a little bit of landscaping and a whole lot of physics to teach her a lesson that totaled her car and her bank account. I live on a corner lot. Now, usually, corner lots are great. You have more space, fewer direct neighbors, and a nice view. But my corner lot sits right at an intersection that has a traffic light. This light is notorious in our neighborhood. It is one of those lights that stays red for what feels like 3 business days. If you are stuck at it, you are going to wait. Most people, being functioning members of society, sit there and wait for the green light. They listen to a podcast, they sip their coffee, they contemplate their life choices. But not Sheila. Sheila lives 3 houses down. She drives one of those massive luxury SUVs. You know the type. It is white, it is pristine, and it is roughly the size of a small apartment building. It has never seen a speck of dirt in its life. It is the kind of vehicle designed to climb mountains, but the steepest incline it ever faces is the ramp at the Starbucks drive-thru. Sheila is a very busy woman. We know this because she walks with that frantic energy of someone who is late for a meeting that does not exist. She is always on her phone, always holding a venti latte, and always wearing sunglasses that cost more than my first car. The problem started about 6 months ago. The city decided to do some road work on the main street, which caused traffic to back up a bit more than usual at the light on my corner. Instead of waiting in line like a peasant, Sheila discovered a life hack. She realized that if she turned right onto my street, she could hop the curb, cut across the corner of my lawn, shaving off the 90-degree angle of the intersection, and pop out onto the cross street, effectively bypassing the red light entirely. The first time I saw it happen, I was standing in my kitchen, drinking my morning coffee. I heard an engine revving, a sound like a jet taking off, and looked out the window just in time to see this white behemoth mounting my curb. It rolled over my beautiful hand-manicured Kentucky bluegrass, leaving 2 distinct, depressed tracks in the soil before bouncing off the other curb and speeding away. I stood there, blinking. I honestly thought it was a mistake. Maybe she lost control. Maybe she swerved to avoid a squirrel. I went outside to inspect the damage. It was not terrible, but the ground was soft from a rainstorm the night before, so there were definitely ruts. I sighed, got my rake and some soil, and patched it up. I figured it was a one-time thing. I was wrong. I was so wrong. The next day, same time. 7:45 in the morning. I hear the roar. I look out. There she is. She mounts the curb, cuts the wheel, tears across the corner, and zooms off. This time, she was going faster. She was getting confident. The ruts were deeper. My grass was getting ripped up by her all-terrain tires. Now, I am a reasonable man. I believe in communication. I believe that most conflicts can be resolved with a polite conversation. So, that evening, I walked down to Sheila's house. I knocked on the door. After a moment, she answered. She was wearing yoga pants and holding a glass of wine, looking at me like I was a door-to-door salesman trying to sell her a vacuum cleaner. "Hi, Sheila," I said, putting on my best friendly neighbor smile. "I am the guy on the corner. The gray house." "Okay," she said, taking a sip of wine. "Can I help you?" "Yeah, actually," I said. "I noticed the last couple of mornings you have been cutting across the corner of my lawn to get around the light. It is tearing up the grass pretty bad. I just spent a lot of time reseeding that area, so I was hoping you could just stick to the road from now on." She looked at me for a second, then let out a short, sharp laugh. It was not a nice laugh. It was the kind of laugh a villain does before they explain their evil plan. "Oh, that," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "Honey, it is just a little patch of dirt. I am in a rush in the mornings. The traffic is a nightmare. I am not hurting anything." "Well, you are hurting the grass," I said, my smile faltering slightly. "And it is my property. It is not a driveway. It is barely 3 feet of grass," she snapped, her tone shifting from dismissive to annoyed. "Don't be so petty. I have places to be. It saves me 5 minutes. Just grow up and deal with it." And then she closed the door in my face. I stood there on her porch, staring at the wood grain of her door. The audacity, the sheer unadulterated entitlement. Just a little patch of dirt. Don't be so petty. Before we see how Sheila destroys her own life and financial stability, smash that like button. It lets me know that you want more stories about entitled people getting exactly what they deserve. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And have you ever dealt with a neighbor who treated your property like public land? Let me know down below. Okay, back to the war. I walked back to my house, and the sleeping dragon inside me began to stir. You know that feeling? It is not rage. Rage is hot and messy. This was cold. This was calculating. This was the feeling of a man who knows he is right, knows the law is on his side, and has the patience of a saint waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But I decided to give her one more chance. Maybe she was having a bad day. Maybe the wine was talking. I decided to try passive deterrence. The next day, I went to the hardware store and bought some of those little orange reflective driveway markers. You know, the thin fiberglass rods you stick in the ground so snowplows do not hit your mailbox? I lined the edge of my property with them, a nice, visible barrier. The next morning, I watched from the window. Sheila's SUV came roaring down the street. She saw the markers. Did she stop? Did she turn? No. She plowed right through them. I heard the snap, snap, snap of fiberglass breaking as her bumper crushed them into the dirt. She did not even tap the brakes. She literally drove over my warning signs. Now it was personal. I went out and collected the shattered remains of my markers. I called the non-emergency police line. An officer came out about 3 hours later. He looked at the tire tracks, looked at the broken sticks, and sighed. "Look," the officer said, hitching up his belt, "I can write a report for vandalism, but unless you catch her in the act or have video, it is hard to prove who did it. And even then, it is a minor civil dispute. Your best bet is to put up a fence or something sturdy." "So, I can put up something sturdy?" I asked. "On my property." "As long as it is on your land and complies with city ordinances," the officer said, shrugging. "It is your lawn. You can landscape it how you want." You can landscape it how you want. Those words echoed in my mind like a gospel choir. I thanked the officer and went inside. I pulled up the city survey maps. I found my property lines. I found the easement regulations. The city had a right-of-way for utilities, sure, but the surface, that was mine. I owned the dirt. I owned the grass, and I had a right to protect it. Sheila continued her routine for another week. The rut in my yard was turning into a trench. When it rained, it filled with water and mud, which she then splashed all over my sidewalk. I would see her driving by, and sometimes she would even smirk at my house. She thought she had won. She thought she had bullied me into submission. She thought I was just going to accept my role as her personal shortcut. She thought wrong. I called up a buddy of mine, Mike. Mike owns a landscaping company. He is a big guy, the kind of guy who can lift a patio paver with one hand and eat a sandwich with the other. I told him the situation. "Mike," I said, "I need rocks, big ones." "How big?" Mike asked. "Big enough to stop a tank," I said. "But pretty. I want them to look like decorative features, a rock garden." Mike laughed. "I got you. I have some granite boulders at the yard that weigh about 400 pounds each. They are jagged, heavy, and absolutely immovable without heavy machinery." "Perfect," I said. "Bring them over." We scheduled the installation for a Saturday, when I knew Sheila went to her yoga retreat or whatever it was she did to pretend she was a calm person. She left at 8 in the morning. As soon as her white SUV turned the corner, Mike rolled up with a flatbed truck and a bobcat loader. We got to work. We did not just drop rocks on the lawn. That would be too obvious. No, we were creating art. We dug out the trench she had made, widening it slightly to create a nice bed. We put down some landscaping fabric, and then we placed the boulders. We put 3 of them right on the corner, exactly in the path she took every single morning. These were not small stones. These were jagged granite monsters, about the size of a mini fridge, but dense. We buried the bottom third of them into the earth so they were anchored solid. If you hit these, they were not rolling away. You were stopping. But here's the genius part. We did not want them to be totally exposed. We wanted them to blend in. So, around the rocks, we planted tall, ornamental pampas grass. It is that feathery, decorative grass that grows about 3 to 4 feet high. It looks soft. It looks fluffy. It looks like something you could drive a car through and just hear a soft swish. By the time we were done, it looked beautiful. It looked like a high-end landscape feature. A nice cluster of tall grasses waving in the breeze. Hidden inside that grass, however, were 3,000 pounds of jagged granite waiting to say hello. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive engineering. To a pedestrian walking by, the rocks were visible if you looked closely through the stalks. To a driver sitting up high in an SUV, speeding and cutting a corner, all they would see is a patch of tall grass, a soft, yielding patch of grass. Sunday passed peacefully. Sheila must have stayed home or taken a different route because the trap remained unsprung. I spent the day watering my new plants, smiling at the bees buzzing around and imagining the physics of a collision. Then came Monday, the day of reckoning. I woke up early. I wanted a front row seat. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, a nice Colombian roast. I set up a chair by the front window. I even set up a little camera on my dashboard in my own car parked in the driveway, just in case I needed insurance footage. 7:45 arrived. The traffic at the light was backed up, just as usual. The stage was set. I heard it before I saw it. The aggressive acceleration of a V8 engine. Sheila turned onto my street. She was moving fast, probably frustrated by the traffic on the main road. I watched as she approached the corner. She did not slow down. She did not hesitate. She saw the new landscaping, the tall, feathery grass, and she must have thought, "Oh, look, he planted some weeds, whatever. My truck can handle weeds." She wrenched the wheel to the right. The white SUV mounted the curb with a bounce. She gunned the engine to power through the soft terrain. The moment of impact was louder than I expected. It was not a thud. It was a crunch, a sickening, metal-tearing, frame-bending crunch that vibrated through the glass of my window. Crunch, slam. The SUV hit the first hidden boulder at roughly 25 miles per hour. The laws of momentum took over immediately. The rock did not move. The rock did not care. The SUV, however, cared very much. The front right tire made contact first. The wheel was instantly obliterated, the rim shattered. But the momentum carried the car forward, driving the boulder deep into the undercarriage. The front end of the SUV pitched violently downward, then shot upward as the vehicle vaulted over the rock. There was a screech of tearing metal as the oil pan, the transmission housing, and who knows what else were ripped open by the granite peak. The SUV slammed down on the other side, skidded about 3 feet, and came to a halt in the middle of the cross street, smoke and steam instantly billowing out from under the hood. Silence followed. For about 3 seconds, the world was quiet. Then, the horn started honking, a continuous, mournful blare, likely caused by her face hitting the airbag. I took a sip of my coffee. "Ah," I whispered. "Justice." If you are enjoying watching this entitlement get crushed, hit the like button. It shows me that you appreciate sweet revenge just as much as I do. And tell me in the comments, what would you do in my situation? Would you have warned her again, or was the rock garden the only way? Let's see how she likes the consequences. I put my mug down and walked outside, acting as shocked and concerned as a neighbor should be. By the time I got to the sidewalk, Sheila was stumbling out of the driver's side door. The airbag had deployed, dusting her in white powder. She looked like a powdered donut that had been dropped on the floor. She was unhurt physically, but she looked dazed. Fluids were pooling under her car rapidly. Oil, coolant, transmission fluid. It was bleeding out. "Oh my God!" I yelled, running over. "Sheila, are you okay?" She looked at me, eyes wide, shaking. Then the shock wore off, and the rage set in. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "You!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "What did you do? You put a rock there! You tried to kill me!" "I put landscaping on my property," I said calmly. "You drove through my garden." "It's a trap!" she shrieked. "You set a trap! Look at my car! It's destroyed!" By now, the commotion had attracted attention. Drivers who were stuck at the light were rolling down their windows, laughing. Neighbors were coming out onto their porches. The police were called. This time, it was an emergency, considering a vehicle was blocking the road and leaking hazardous fluids. When the police arrived, it was a different officer than before, but the dynamic was clear. He looked at the scene. He saw the tire tracks going over the curb, through my clearly defined landscaping bed, and impacting the rock that was roughly 10 feet inside my property line. Sheila was hysterical. She was trying to explain to the officer that I had maliciously placed invisible rocks to destroy her car. The officer, a veteran with a mustache that commanded respect, listened patiently. Then, he looked at the tracks. He looked at the curb. He looked at the rock. "Ma'am," the officer said, cutting her off, "were you driving on the roadway when the accident occurred?" I was cutting across," she stammered. "Everyone does it, but he put a rock there." "So," the officer continued, his voice flat, "you left the roadway, drove onto private property, destroyed this man's landscaping, and struck a decorative object?" "It was hidden," she yelled. "It was in a garden bed," the officer corrected. "Ma'am, driving on the sidewalk and private property is illegal. You are at fault here." Sheila turned purple. Actual violet. She started screaming about lawsuits. She threatened to sue me, the city, the rock manufacturer, and probably God himself. The officer wrote her 3 tickets, one for reckless driving, one for driving on a sidewalk/non-roadway, and one for property damage for destroying my grass in the curb. But the best part? The absolute cherry on top of this sundae of misery? The insurance. About a week later, I got a call from her insurance adjuster. He sounded tired. He asked for my version of events. I told him everything. I sent him the photos of the previous damage, the police report number, and the photos of my decorative landscape feature. "So," the adjuster said, sounding like he was rubbing his temples, "she intentionally drove off the road to bypass a traffic control device?" "Yes, sir," I said, "every morning." "And the rocks were on your private property, inside the property line?" "Yes, sir. Decorative granite." "Okay," he said. "Thank you." I found out later from a neighbor who talks to Sheila that her insurance company denied the claim. Apparently, there's a clause in most policies about intentional acts and off-road usage when the vehicle is not designed for it, or when the driver is committing a crime, like reckless driving/trespassing. Since she admitted to the police she was doing it on purpose to skip a light, and she was not on a legal road, They refused to cover the damage to her car. The damage was extensive. The frame was twisted. The engine block was cracked. The transmission was toast. The car was a total loss. She still owed roughly $40,000 on it. So, Sheila's out a $60,000 car. She's on the hook for the loan. She had to pay to have my landscaping fixed, which, by the way, I hired Mike to redo. And we made it even nicer this time. Sheila does not drive by my house anymore. She moved about 2 months later. I heard she downsized to a condo where someone else takes care of the lawn. As for me, I still sit on my porch drinking my coffee. My lawn is green, the stripes are straight, and right there on the corner, nestled in the tall, waving grass, sit 3 granite boulders. They are peaceful, they are silent, they are victorious. And every now and then, when the light is red and the traffic is backed up, I see a driver look at that corner. They look at the grass, they look at the shortcut, and then they look at the shiny, jagged scar on the rock where Sheila's oil pan met its maker. And they wait for the green light. Lesson learned. Respect the lawn, or the lawn will respect you back with granite. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story of landscaping justice, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a video. I have got plenty more stories of entitled people meeting reality coming up. See you in the next one.